Today in our 2015 Ram 2500, we're going to take a look at and also show you how to install the Firestone Air Command 2 standard duty compressor. This dual function compressor offers analog gauges and 130 psi maximum rating. Part number is F2178. Now this is what our gauge cluster is going to look like inside the vehicle. As you can see, we're going to have a nice dual dial gauge. When our running lights come on, that's going to be backlit, so we'll be able to see it day or night. And the main reason we like the dual analog compressors or the dual style compressors is because each airbag can be controlled individually. You can see each one's going to have a needle. So even for off-center loads, we can really dial this in side to side. If all you're doing is straight line towing, or if you've just got like a single connection point, whether it's a fifth wheel, really a single path compressor will work out fine. The dual paths are definitely designed more for the off-center loads. It does have 130 pound maximum PSI with the compressor, but the maximum pressure for our bags is 100. So this is going to make it nice. We can go right up to that pressure and not have to worry about it too much. See, by pressing down, that's going to release the pressure that's in our bag, and up we'll add it. Now before we begin our installation, we can take a brief look over our kit. Here you'll see our standard duty compressor. Now, this is what your controls are going to look like. Now to make our connections wiring wise, we're going to have a pre-made harness. Got a fuse holder here. This gets connected to the ignition source. This is going to go directly to our battery, so it's going to be an easy to locate source. Got our relay, which is going to protect our switches from overloading. And then there's just two wires to hook up. The white wire is going to go to our switch panel. The orange wire is going to go to our compressor. Of course, inside the vehicle, we're also going to find a light source to get that gauge lit up. We'll have a couple links of tubing here. That's going to allow us to run from the compressor to our switch panel, then from our switch panel back to each airbag. The compressor is also going to come with a filter. See, it's just going to attach through a short piece of air line there, and a couple replacement elements for it if you need them down the road. To attach the compressor to our vehicle, we're going to be using the Firestone compressor bracket kit. This is part number F2497, and as you can see, it's going to be pre-drilled. We're going to use the U-bolts around our frame. That way we won't have to make any modifications to the frame of the truck. Now here in the passenger side frame rail is where we're going to be mounting our compressor in place. Again, we're going to be using our bracket. We're basically directly below the rear door handle here. There are two little tabs that stick out. We've got one here and one here. Our mounting bracket won't quite fit between them. If we try to place it over it, you can see there's a little bit of wiggle. What we're going to do is just take this down about 1/8 of an inch, so when we put our plate up there, we don't have any movement out of it. Now once we've confirmed we get it in place here, we're not going to have any of that tipping. It's a good idea to spray that with some corrosion preventative, whether it's a spray paint or an undercoating, just so you don't have any rusting. Now to mount our compressor to our bracket, we're going to take the screws provided. You'll see our mounts there in the compressor are going to line up with the holes, so let's just bring our bolt through the back. And the compressor is going to go down and on. Then we're going to have one of the provided flat washers and nylon locking nuts. Now we're going to do that at all 4 mounting locations. Now I'm mounting with the screw head towards the back because we do have limited clearance here. If you're mounting to your frame, it's probably going to be better to do it the opposite way. Now you'll see the line that's running right down through here. We want to ensure that our U-bolts go in behind that. We don't want to pinch any wiring or anything like that. You see how they just kind of rotate over the frame? Just like that. And now we can just lift our compressor up, guide it over our U-bolts, and we're going to attach it with lock nuts that are provided with the kit. Those are the same size nuts we use to attach this bracket to that cross plate. Now we can start tightening these down. All right, that's nice and secure. Now we can torque those down. All right, now we'll start getting some of our connections made. This is going to be our ground wire. We're going to use this to ground out the compressor. We can go somewhere up here on the frame. We haven't really bolted this to the vehicle. There's contact here between the bracket and frame, but I don't trust that ground. So you want to use another source here. If you're not using this bracket and you drill through your frame with these bolts, you can definitely mount it behind that bolt there. Then we'll place our ring terminal over the hole and then fasten down our self-tapping screw. Now it's going to be time to get our relay mounted. You'll see that tab on the top. You can use that to mount to any location that you want. We're going to be going just up here on the frame. I'm going to use a self-tapping screw, similar to the one we use for our ground. Once we've got that hole drilled out, we'll just get our relay secured in position there. I'll pull my plug down off my relay there. What I'll do is I'm just going to start taping this up really well down here where these wires are underneath the truck. We don't want them getting hung up on anything or let too much moisture get around them. So I'm just going to use a zip tie and kind of redirect the wiring. Our orange one's going to be connected to the red one right here at the compressor. The red one, this one needs to run forward up to the battery. And our white one is going to follow our air lines around and go up into the cab of the truck. So we'll just plan on that as we get our connections made. Now the end of our orange wire is going to have a spade connector on it. That will plug directly into the compressor, just like that. And then you could kind of bundle up this excess wire. But something I prefer to do is use a butt connector in this situation. We're going to use part number DW05744. This is a heat shrink butt connector. It'll allow us to trim our compressor wire, trim the relay wire. We'll leave a little bit of extra, but not too much. And we can actually connect these, shorten it up, and make it look a lot nicer under here. All right, now you're going to use a heat source, whether you want to use a heat gun, a mini torch, or like a lighter. We just want to start heating up the end of that connector. It's going to start to shrink down. You don't want to overheat it or discolor it. Just a little bit of heat at a time. And eventually that wire is going to magnify. Looks like it gets bigger and there's some clear gel that comes out of the end there. At that point, you're done. Now we're going to start running the power wire up towards our battery. We of course want to keep this up and out of the way, a safe area away from heat sources or any sharp edges or anything like that. We're going to go up above the frame rail most of the way. Now anywhere we can along the way, we want to get our line secured just to help keep it up in a good safe area. We'll use our provided zip ties and of course trim them off. Now the positive terminals of our battery are going to be right here, so this is the area we'll want to bring our fuse holder up to. All right, we'll want to bring up any of the slack that we have in that line, and once it's said and done, you want to anchor that off. Like we could bring it right up to there, anchor that off, and then we won't have to worry about any slack going down below the vehicle and getting hung up. All right, now before we make our connection, we want to remove the fuse out of the holder. Just going to lift out on this tab. You see that 25 amp fuse there? Just going to pull that out and set it aside. That's going to be the last thing we'll actually put it back in place. We'll do that right before we test the system. Now the short side there, we're going to strip off. We'll use a 3/8 diameter ring terminal there. Crimp that down, and a 10mm socket, we can remove that nut. I like to place it under anything already existing, so we'll place that there, and then we'll replace that nut. All right, and the rest of the wire we've got, we'll secure that after we put our fuse in. The cover's got a small tab there, so we can get everything kind of secured up and out of the way. Now on our compressor, we'll pull out the red cap in the end, and we want to thread in the push to connect fitting. So we'll tighten that down so we get plenty of the thread sealant down inside the compressor side there. Now we're going to start running some air lines from the rear of the vehicle here up to the passenger compartment. All three airlines are going to look identical. We've got one coming from the driver's side airbag, one coming from the passenger, and then of course one from our compressor. So you're going to need to mark a couple of these. We're going to put one line on one, we're going to put two lines on the other. We're going to do that at both ends. So when we eventually get them where they're going, we're going to know which one's which. Now just behind where we've mounted the compressor, we're going to have the body mount here at the back of the cab. And we'll run those right over that hump, staying in that tube. That's going to keep them up and away from any of the moving objects, and it'll keep them protected. Now the white wire, we need to get to the switch panel. That's heading the same way as those. So we're going to bring it down through the oblong hole in the top. And before we get these airlines pulled all the way through, we can tape this off to it, and it'll help us pull it through there. Now we can just continue to feed them through. Now just like where we pulled it out over on that side, there's going to be an oblong hole by this body mount. And that's the one I'm going to use to get this airline to the rear of the vehicle here. It's going to be the one that has the single mark, so that's going to be for our right side airbag. And the one without a mark, we can run that to our compressor. We're going to use our tubing cutter here. We'll cut off just the very end there. We'll leave a little bit of slack here. This is part number F9009. It's going to give us a really nice flush cut, and that just has to be slid into the compressor. You'll feel it stop, and you should be able to press it in further, just like that. Now since we had the compressor mounted over on that passenger side, we're using up a lot of airline to cross over. And when it's all said and done, we're really not going to have enough to make it to both airbags. So we're going to use an additional length, 18-foot length. This is part number F0938. It's the exact same airline that came to the kit, but this is going to give us enough length to get up to the cab and back to this, the double mark we're going to use for the driver's side bag. So we want to bring it up and over so it'll come out kind of the same direction that our other two lines do. And we'll join those together, zip tie them off, and continue forward with them. Now right above this hump area, you're going to find that main wire loom that runs up towards the cab of the truck. It's a really good idea to run along with that since it's going in the same direction we are. Now if we come just in front of where the kind of the transfer case, this is our front drive shaft is, right here we're going to have a small plug on the floorboard of the truck. We're going to run our airlines right through that. Let's go up to the top, we'll pull up that carpet and find out right where it's at. All right, now that grommet should be located kind of in the middle of the floorboard area here. We're going to pull up the scuff panel here using a trim panel tool. That way we can get underneath there and figure out exactly where it's at and bring our airline up and through. Now we'll have three here, clips that we'll pull straight up, and then we need to just kind of rotate it out and backward. Then we can pull back that little piece of weather stripping there on the side, and we should be able to get to the ones located here. We just pull up and straight back. Hey, you'll notice right here, once you've lifted up the carpet, there's going to be a larger round circle right here in the middle with a little dimple in the middle of it. That's the plug that we're going to be taking out. A little bit of sound deadening material here on the floor, so you just want to trim around that to release it. You see that's just going to pop out. That's that undercoating material that you've kind of got to trim through, that sound deadening material. Now I'm going to use a step style drill bit here, and I'm going to enlarge this hole so we can pass our three airline tubing pieces and our wire through. And we're going to enlarge that hole so it's just inside of our clips. We still want our clips to be there. We're going to put this back in place, and we can bring our tubing and wire right up through it, run it along our floorboard and up to our gauges. Now the only place you'll have any issues as you pass this airline through is going to be where this wiring connector passes through. This is going to be replaced anyway with a butt connector, so I'm going to trim that off, tape it back to that airline. We should be able to draw that through without any problem. Now we'll bring our tubing up through. We'll grab it from the top side and then just gently start pulling it till we have it all up into the passenger area. Now as we were passing that through, our grommet kind of came off there, so we just want to slide it down and reposition it in the floorboard. Once we've got everything wired up, we're going to seal this area up with some black silicone so we won't have to worry about any dirt or moisture coming in the car. Now we can pull kind of backwards on our carpet and down. And we'll be able to loop this right up and around. We're going to be able to secure that off, and we'll have all the hoses right up here where we need them to connect. And you'll see our switch panel wire made it about that far. We're going to have to extend it slightly to get it to the right position. Now it's time to get our gauge panel put into place. We want to find an area on our dashboard where this is going to be out of the way, but also somewhere where it's going to be accessible so we can get to our levers. And we're going to go in this general area with it. There's nothing really in here behind the dash that we have to be worried about, so our fasteners can go through right there. All right, now once we find the position we want it, we're going to mark our dashboard. I like to use dry erase marker, that way we can always wipe it off. Now the gauge cluster has some adjustability kind of in and out there. So you want to get your holes pretty close to in the same spot. I'm going to do this on both sides. Now we're going to remove the two Phillips screws. There's one here and one here. That's going to allow us to pull this panel out slightly. That'll get us in there so we can get our hands in here and get all of our hardware started. So we're going to place the provided hardware through with one of the washers. Then on the back side we're going to put on another washer and also one of the nylon lock nuts. Now you need a 3/8 wrench on the back side to hold that in place while you tighten it down. And if you need to, you can pull this panel out all the way as we've done. Now just pop that panel back in position. And the two screws we pulled out down here, we'll replace those. All right, now we're going to separate all of our wires and hoses and we can start making some connections. We've got a parking brake cable located right back here. This is what we'll use to zip tie our air lines off to. That's going to create a fixed anchor point here for us. As we talked about, we're going to need to extend that white wire, so we can get it taken care of now. Just going to strip the end of that back, and we're going to extend it with some white wire that we had just laying around the shop. Color doesn't matter so much as diameter. You want them to be similar. And that wire needs to get connected to the lead that's closest to the middle on our left-hand switch. So that's going to be this one. Trim that off to the appropriate length, strip it, and crimp it into that butt connector. Well, this is a heat shrink butt connector, so we can use the same approach that we did underneath the vehicle. The other wire, or the one that, if we're looking at the left switch again, the one that comes off the left side, this is going to go to ground. Now on our light, it doesn't matter which one we send to ground or which one we send to the dashboard illumination circuit. So we'll choose one, we'll trim that off. We're going to get it stripped back. We're also going to strip off that extra white wire that we had. You will need to provide some. There's a little short piece in the kit, but it's not really enough to get you where you need to go. I'm going to twist those two together and we'll add them into that other butt connector there. That way we'll be grounding out our switches and our light at the same point. This was the one going to the illumination circuit. We'll take care of that in a few minutes. Now we're going to be tidying all this up, but we're going to do it with our air lines too. So let's start on those now. Now, however you decided to mark or keep track of these, you want to use the one that's coming from the compressor. That's going to go to the T, the two that are tied together. That's going to be basically our supply line. Now, if this won't slide on for you easily, you could soak it in some hot water. That'll soften that plastic up a little bit. It might make it a little bit easier for you. That'll just plug in just like that. Now the left switch, that's going to be for our left bag. The right switch port here, that's going to be for the right bag. So you just want to choose the right air hose, whichever one you had marked for those, and get those connected as well. Now our illumination circuit, we'll need to extend that out slightly. Again, we're just using some extra wire we had here in the shop of similar size. Now, I've run out of the zip ties provided with the kit, so at this point I'm just going to be using some extras we had here. Now, if you don't want the appearance of all the air lines that are running out of the back here in the wiring, you can use some electrical tape. kind of tidy them up a bit. It's a little tough to do. I would recommend maybe if you wanted it completely covered up and not visible, that you do them each separately before you installed it. Now the illumination circuit we need to light up our gauge typically is right behind our switch here. We should be able to find a wire there. So we're going to pull out on the bottom side of this panel. There's just going to be clips that'll release. You can see we got 5 clips there that release, and you rotate it, just kind of pull straight out on it. If you look coming right off the back of that switch, we're going to have wires that run out of it. Here we got 6 of them there. Typically it's one of the orange ones that gives us the signal, so we're going to use a test light to find it. And what we're looking for is just like that. See, when we turn the lights on, that comes on. As soon as we turn them off, that goes off. So in our situation here, that's going to be an orange wire with a tan stripe. Now on the side of that switch, closest to the middle of the vehicle, there's going to be that tab. You can press that tab, that's going to release our plug. Brown wire, which we tied into that illumination circuit wire over. And they have provided a quick connector for you in the kit. We're going to use a splice method. It seems to kind of protect your vehicle wiring a little bit more. So we're going to splice that. Strip each side back. We can also trim off our brown wire and get it spliced back. Now we'll bring our brown wire out, and just like we did underneath the dashboard, let's twist these 2 together. Then we can take our plug side right into our butt connector, and that connection will be made. And that can be plugged right back into the back of our switch. Panel put back on, we'll be in good shape. Yeah, just like we took it off, kind of slide it in, and then just rotate it. Now just above our parking brake pedal here, there's a little bumper there, so when it comes up it hits that. If we look right above that, there's going to be a stud that sticks out of the side of the vehicle. We want to loosen that up using a 13mm socket and get that removed, and that's going to be the stud we're going to place our ground behind. All we have to do is put it in behind this nut, and that'll give us a great location. Now our wires should be ran up and out of the way. This little arm right here is going to move, so we want to have plenty of clearance for that. And we're going to add on another ring terminal, just like the one we used for our battery. Place that on the stud and then return the nut. Now of course, once that's in position, we'll want to tighten our nut back down. Now we can test our connections just by turning on the running lights. You'll see that's going to illuminate there, so we'll know that that connection's fine. That should mean that our other connections are fine as well. Once we've got everything in position, this is when we're going to take our silicone and really apply plenty around this plug, eliminate any of the elements from getting in our vehicle. Now we're going to slide our cover back in here. You just want to align the tabs. You might have to pull out on this rubber slightly. And just clip them in place. Now you're going to have options here as far as what you want to do to get your air compressor lines into the airbag. You can remove the existing line from the top of the airbag and simply place this one in. Or what we prefer to do is get a couple of extra T's and we'll cut this line, slide our T into place. That way not only will we be able to air up our airbags from the compressor, but also in an emergency, we still have the Schrader valves in the back. We'll just zip tie that right back there where we had it before. Now we can head on over to the driver's side and do the same thing over there. Now the last step we've got to do is put on our filter here, and then we'll be ready to put in that fuse and test out the system. Slide it up on there as far as you can. Again, just like before, a little bit of hot water can help you out with that. We're going to be mounting that up there as high as we can reach to keep it up out of the way of any, road spray or dirt or dust, anything like that. We're just going to use a zip tie to connect it. You do want it to be oriented so it's not going to bounce up against anything or cause any noise. And once we've got that anchored properly, we're going to put a loop in it and then go right to the compressor. that cut off to length, that'll go right in the stud on the end of the compressor there. All right, now we'll slide that fuse in, put the cap on, and secure it up with a couple zip ties. Now to test out the compressor, we'll simply press our levers up. You'll hear the compressor kick on, and we're going to see our gauge moving. As you can see, they fill up rather quickly. That's 10. And that's going to be 20 psi. The compressor does a really nice job of getting them up to pressure without taking too much time. Now that we know our compressor is working fine, we want to check all of our connections by spraying them down with soapy water. We take it up to about 30 psi as we have here. Let it sit for 15 or 20 minutes with that soapy water on it, checking periodically and make sure no new bubbles form. And as long as they don't, you're ready to hook up to your trailer or load up the back of your truck and you can hit the road. And that will complete our installation of the Firestone Air Command 2 air compressor system. Part number F2178 on our 2015 Ram 25.
Click the link below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com.